So about a month or so ago, I made a video on the upcoming Bungie title Marathon and absolutely slandered it, saying that I thought it looked really dodgy and just really poor by their standards. And it's fair to say, a lot of people didn't agree with me. Well,
you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now.
Yeah, this game has gone to absolute pot in the last few days. So if you haven't seen the recent reports, there's been claims made against Bungie that they have essentially stolen artwork for the upcoming Marathon title. Now, this includes dozens of different artwork pieces which are all littered throughout Marathon, like they're not exactly like a small aspect of the game, they're literally on everything. We're talking things like decals, icons, and even like text sheets which have just built up so much of Marathon's core art style from what we've seen so far, but it's not authentically from Bungie or Marathon or whatever. It's actually all been lifted virtually one-to-one from a creator called Anti-Real who did all this work via a poster back in 2017. Now Bungie did come out and say that supposedly this was all carried out by an old employee, right? So they can just completely wash their hands of it, say, oh no, this wasn't our fault, somebody who used to work here did it. Yeah, whatever, it's fucking bollocks, let's be real. They got caught, they didn't know how to react, they thought, oh, we'll blame it on someone that's not here anymore. And this is just made even more obvious by the fact that the artist in question, Anti-Real, whose work was stolen, is still followed to this day by a number of current existing Bungie employees. So it's not as if nobody had access to this artwork, like it's not like it's been sat there in a file dormant for nearly a decade or however long they've been working on Marathon. This is something that they have had active access to. Now when it comes to Bungie, this isn't exactly a first offence when it comes to things like this. They have been guilty of stealing art multiple times in the past. And funnily enough, have still managed to get away with it pretty much every single time. Over the course of just Destiny 2's life cycle alone, we've had previously stolen fan art being used as a design for a Destiny weapon like Nerf gun type thing, so they were literally selling a product that was based off the designs of just something fan made and not giving any credit or any sort of financial incentive or reward behind this. You've also got in 2023, Bungie stole physical fan artwork and used it within a Destiny 2 cutscene. Like, they weren't even trying to hide it at that stage. Surely you'd think, if we're going to steal something from our fans here and sell it and profit off it, we're not going to put it in a game that this fan's going to obviously see. Like, you're just setting yourselves up for failure. Not to mention, there's also been claims throughout the last sort of year or so that some of Destiny 2's DLC narrative was just completely stolen from other media. Now this is something that has gone to court and has subsequently, I believe, been dropped at the time of recording this anyway, but still, you've not only got Bungie sort of allegedly stealing visual effects for their games, you're talking about actual narrative storyline here, like the things that the building blocks of video games are built upon. Unless if you are Marathon, for example, where they've already said that they don't need a proper storyline from the get-go, they're just going to introduce it throughout the DLCs, which sounds like a horrendous idea. Anyway, even if you take all of these previous discretions out of the equation and solely just focus on the most recent controversy with Bungie, there has actually been a clear admission of guilt with this one. Bungie have come out and said, yep, we have taken these assets and used them and did not mean to, allegedly, we're sorry. Now, realistically, that should be grounds for legal action, and I kind of hope that Anti-Real does go for this and actually does try to sue these people for just completely stealing their property. I do understand that off the back of all of this, Bungie have of course apologised and have, I believe, paid or at least offered compensation, but realistically, they're only doing this because they got caught, right? It's not like they're doing this off their own backs or like out of the kindness of their own heart because they realise they've made a mistake or anything. It's just as simple as you've been caught out for like the 5th time. However, this time it's to such a grand extent and such a detriment to your game that you've had no other choice than to actually come out and admit fault. And speaking of that apology, that was actually carried out during the most recent live stream, which was meant to be a full showcase of Marathon, showing off more gameplay and just providing a bit more insight about Marathon. But unfortunately, this whole thing was just an absolute train wreck. Of course, we had the art director just come out and apologise up front for all the recent controversies. However, the only thing going through my head was literally just this.
We are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry.
The whole thing just felt absolutely meaningless to me, and I think the biggest killer is the fact that the main crux, the main actual point of this livestream was to demonstrate more of Marathon, right? What we're actually going to be physically paying money to play, and they can't do that because of the current issues surrounding the stolen artwork. Because Bungie can't physically identify to what extent the artwork has been used, they don't know how intrinsically linked to the remaining aspects of Marathon it actually is. They are refusing to show us any new stuff in case they have kind of copywritten or, you know what I mean, stolen further art, which in itself is just crazy. They don't know where they've got their own material from in the creation of their biggest game since Destiny 2. The whole thing was just completely embarrassing, and honestly, you could see that the devs that were on screen there felt just as shit about being there as we did watching it. None of them wanted to speak, they all sat there looking depressed. Like, you literally had moments where they were sat in silence just nodding along to whatever the main host was saying. There was no input, nothing. The vibe there must be fucking awful at the minute, and that is what reports are suggesting. Apparently it is just shockingly poor at the minute, and loads of the Bungie devs are genuinely scared about potentially coming a Concord 2. Now realistically, if this game does flop massively, we know for a fact that Sony are infamous for shutting down games. I mean, as we've just said, Concord 2 shut down 2 weeks after its launch. So if this doesn't hit the ground running, and realistically it doesn't look like it's going to, could we see the end of Bungie? To me, we kind of already seen the end of Bungie anyway, because none of the fuckers that made what I love to play are still there. However, that being said, Bungie as a brand obviously still holds a bit of pedigree. There is a bit of pull there. So even if this thing is, say, moderately successful or doesn't make a massive loss, it's not going to be enough to be considered as a success. And realistically, Sony, and more importantly to them, their shareholders, are not going to be happy. Because let's be honest, it's Bungie. The bar needs to be set relatively high. They paid, what, $4 billion to acquire the rights to Bungie, Sony, I believe? So they kind of want them to start printing some money fairly soon. Because realistically, outside of Destiny 2 DLCs, these fuckers have made nothing for, what, 8-9 years at this stage? It's fucking ridiculous. Supposedly another thing that's really killed the hype of this game is the fact that there is actually another extraction shooter coming out alongside it, that being Ark Raiders. And generally speaking, I'll be honest, I haven't played it, but it seems like the reviews are way more positive than what Marathon have been getting so far, and as that is going to be your main competitor for the upcoming extraction shooter market as such, this in itself is a little bit embarrassing. To be completely honest, I'm still struggling to understand why we actually have Marathon coming out in the state that it is. It does to me just look like a minimum viable product. Like, it is like the most bare bones, bullshit looking game that we've had be shat out of Bungie for a while. And I can't understand why you've named it after something that was so brilliant and rich in story narrative before. Obviously, this game is meant to be supposedly based on the Marathon from back in the 90s that was actually Bungie's first ever game, but that had way more stuff going on with it. It just seems like they've kind of ripped the title from this and just completely ignored the rest of the source material, which, if you are a fan of the original Marathon, probably isn't what you want to see. Ultimately though, when you take everything into account that's sort of happened for the last month or so with this game, I genuinely just feel sad for Bungie. It's not even just anger anymore. I mean, for me, they created my favourite video game franchise ever, right? So they do hold a special little place in my heart. But they're just a shell of what they used to be. And honestly, when it comes to Marathon, I hope that the game either needs delaying massively, or honestly, it could just need to be cancelled. I don't think it will. They're obviously way too far gone in the process to do that. But the gameplay of it looked so mid, and that is something that we often praise Bungie titles for, just having good gameplay mechanics. I personally didn't like the art style, even though it's not even theirs, it's something that they've stolen. It wasn't for me, and the actual just game modes themselves, what we've seen of it so far, it just looks so mid. There's just nothing to it. It's not what we expect from a developer this caliber. Hopefully this doesn't lead to the destruction of Bungie or people losing any jobs or anything like that, but ultimately I do think that some big changes need to be made if this game is going to be a success. But more importantly than that, what do you guys think? Are you guys still excited for Marathon somehow? Let me know what your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you are new here and you have enjoyed, please do consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in another video sometime soon.